Hi there. I bet you think I've completely lost it. Now I'm showing you this little wooden figure. There is actually a thought with this little fellow here. I want to see if I can do with flashlight only a shoot that is like a product shoot. If I was to promote this little fellow here, it's actually a figure designed by a Danish guy called Kai Boysen many years ago, and he did a lot of small figures like this one for kids to play with, but that's another story. In order to do that, my thinking is that, I should say, last time I promised that I would come back to you with this umbrella here. I still have that ambition, but I need to get back to you on that one in a later video. Right now I want to see if I can produce a good picture of this little fellow here. And my thinking is that I want, and this actually inspired by a picture that I took by accident in my living room half a year ago, and it turned out to be one of the most popular pictures on social media, from my side at least so far. I will show it to you here on the screen. But basically my thinking was to see if I could reproduce that so that this little fellow had sort of the same light. And in order to do that, I wanted to create some sort of light modifier that casts the light very specifically on the little wooden figure and nowhere else. And you can see this is basically such a thing. I think it's called a snoot. And I will post a link to some sites that explain how you build this one. This one is not very well constructed, but basically the thinking is that you put your flash in one end, and that basically blocks out all the light other than what is going straight forward, so that you get a very specific direction on your light, and almost no light is cast to the sides of this little box. I would probably recommend you made a more solid version than mine, but mine was good enough just to give it a try to see if I could figure out how to use it. So without further ado, let me just show you the picture the vision that I had, and then explain a little bit about my process for actually arriving at this picture. Okay, so as mentioned, this was my vision, that I would like to have a subject lit by flashlight here in the middle, and then the ambient light or the available light here in the corners and to the side. That should be basically taken out. And that's what they talk about, these flash experts. They talk about layers of light. So basically my first layer of ambient light would be a pitch black picture, and my second layer of light would be what the flash provided. So let's see how that went. The first test shots I did was with this, wasn't actually with the wooden figure, but with this little plastic cow. But it served well, and as you can see, I had some challenges both in getting the entire figure here lit, but also that, I think that was my main problem. But I think I managed to shut out the light, the ambient light, pretty well in this example here. So that was successful. When I then moved to taking the wooden figure here into the frame, I was not that successful, and I found out it was because much of the reflection or the light thrown back from the flash, if I wasn't careful with the angles, that would actually be part of the picture. So I needed to adjust that. And I also found out that even if I tried to make a lot of space between the subject and the background relative to the distance from the subject to the camera, that didn't really help. The light was still thrown back, so I needed to do something else. And here's then the picture that I was actually quite pleased to see when it appeared in Lightroom. Over to the left here, where I'm moving the cursor, that's where the flash was with the snoot, and then the camera was sort of pointing right to left on the subject here, and that meant whatever light was reflected out here did not disturb the picture as such. And that took me actually quite, believe it or not, when you tell the story, it's quite obvious that's the way you should do it, right? But it took me a little while to figure that out. So, but I think it works pretty well, and I think also I managed to shut out the available and ambient light pretty well, and I got a nice reflection here in the surface of the table. It only took me like, 50 to 80 pictures or so to arrive at this. So I'm just showing you a very condensed version of my process. The cool thing is that this picture here I took just after the other one, and this is basically the same setting. This is just instead of the wooden figure, it is a cup of water that I then drop some droplets into. And this also took around 100 pictures to get it like this because there's a timing issue, but that's another story. But basically my point with showing you this picture is it is exactly the same setup. So I have the snoot to the left here in the picture, and then I have the camera to the right, shooting sort of to the left, and that means I only catch the light that the flash throws. And that I can use this for many things, I think. So I think this was a good investment. This is another picture that I took of the same little wooden figure, and this is more what I would call a classic product shoot. Maybe I will do a video on how I did this one, but it was also quite a struggle, and that actually involved the notorious umbrella that I've talked about a few times. But it also involved a lot of setting of the light in the back and getting this background. When you don't have a studio and you don't have backdrops, this can be quite tricky. But I think this is an okay picture, and it also is a little bit more maybe positive. It's not so gloomy as the other one, but I think you need to be able to do both. But I really wanted to see if I could arrive at the other expression that I showed you, one that was similar to the picture of the Amaryllis. What did I learn then? I was very happy to find that this layering of light, where basically you shut out all available light in the first layer, that means you can do product shoots or shoots of basically any still life with limited space and no backdrop. That's really good for me because I don't have a big office, I don't have a big studio. The second thing, as I just mentioned, that when you cross the light and the angle of the camera, then you avoid a large part of the flash reflections in the picture. And that, of course, you don't want to. The whole point is to have this sort of dark background. Number 3 here is that a snoot is a great tool for focus lighting. I need to work a little bit on how to lighten up the subject a little bit more, but I think it worked pretty well for starters, and maybe I should also consider investing in a more professional snoot than my pile of straws from IKEA. Fourth lesson learned is that I think you can work more with the reflections on the surface where the subject stands. So glass or basically whatever you would put there, a drop of water or something like that, that could be a cool effect. And then finally, number 5, the lessons learned from the high-speed shooting here is that it is not for the advanced, that the high-speed shooting actually almost takes care of itself. If I went into my Nikon camera and switched the parameters so that it automatically switches to high-speed shutter when I go below 1/200th of a second in the shutter speed. It's probably individual for each camera. Some will go down to 250, but it's around in that range. Then it automatically switches to high-speed synchronization. And that is actually nice to have in order to shut out ambient and available light, because you want to maybe move to a very, very fast shutter speed in order to do that. And a flash that is not in high-speed synchronization mode will not be able to do that. High-speed synchronization will definitely be a tool I'll be using, as will ITL, but that's another story. I'll get back to that. So I completely stand corrected on both HSS and ITL. I will definitely be using those. But high-speed synchronization, be prepared, because it fires a series of flashes. It requires a lot of power. So the battery pack you saw in my last video, I can highly recommend one of those. Get one of those and get, enough cables between the battery packs and your flashes to not be relying on the in-flash batteries, because it eats a lot of batteries. I think a brand new set of batteries was worn down in less than 10 minutes. That's how it felt. So definitely one of these battery packs. So you know how this works. If you like, thumbs up, dislike, thumbs down. Even subscribe to my channel. I would say though that before you do all that, if you have time to leave me a comment, that would be great. Those comments make this channel better. So whatever feedback you have for me, I really appreciate it. And I use your input to make my channel better. I could also use it if you have some subjects that you want me to shed some light on. I'll be happy to do that. Civilized comments and questions and suggestions are always welcome. Thank you for watching. As always, happy shooting. Take care. Bye bye.